The storm and the crash. The rain began as a shy tapping on the glass, almost a welcome serenade after weeks of parched earth. But Highway 17 harbored a volatile spirit, and the sprinkles swiftly transmuted into a deluge, a solid curtain that devoured the horizon. Impaired vision shrunk to mere feet. Headlights became ghostly orbs, useless against the watery onslaught. Cars crawled, then stuttered to a halt, brake lights flaring like crimson warnings in the murk. Then, the shriek of tortured rubber, a piercing lament abruptly terminated by the brutal thud of colliding steel. A cascade of impacts, inevitable and terrifying. Michael Riley's grip on the ambulance wheel tightened, his knuckles bone-white. The emergency dispatch had arrived a jumble, disrupted by the tempest. Multiple vehicles. 17 south, possible fatalities. A scenario replayed too many times. Each summons eroded his core, a gradual stripping away of idealism, leaving behind only a sediment of weary acceptance. The siren's cry, usually a potent call for rescue, sounded feeble and distant, swallowed by the storm's rage. The wipers waged a futile war against the ceaseless downpour. Through the water-streaked windshield, he discerned the initial horrors: mangled metal, fragmented glass sparkling like wicked gems, the sharp reek of burnt fluids permeating the air. It was a symphony of destruction. Automobiles lay strewn about, some crushed into grotesque shapes, others spun haphazardly. Vapor plumed from shattered engines. The atmosphere vibrated with a cacophony of blaring horns, punctuated by the keening cries of the wounded. Michael steered the ambulance onto the shoulder, its flashing lights adding another stroke to the chaotic canvas. Sarah, his partner, already stood outside snatching her medical kit. "Christ, Mike!" she exclaimed, her voice struggling against the tempest's howl. "It's a combat zone." He offered a curt nod, his face hardening into a mask of professional resolve. "Let's go." They moved swiftly, efficiently, navigating the debris field, their luminous jackets providing a fragile flicker of hope amidst the pervasive gloom. Michael's mind shifted into emergency mode, prioritizing, evaluating, classifying. He suppressed the rising bile, the familiar clenching in his chest. Protocol demanded action. The first casualty, a young man pinned inside his overturned sedan. Michael assessed him quickly, conscious yet dazed, suspected head trauma, fractured tibia. Sarah stabilized his cervical spine as Michael radioed for the rescue team. "ETA on extrication gear?" He snapped into the microphone, his tone sharp and commanding. He pressed onward, leaving Sarah to monitor the patient. A minivan followed, its front end compacted like an accordion. A woman was slumped across the steering wheel, unresponsive. He found a thready pulse, weak but present. He cleared her airway and initiated oxygen support. 2 children occupied the rear seats, miraculously unscathed, but consumed by hysterical sobs. He entrusted them to a state trooper, newly arrived on scene, his features pale yet determined. The hurricane pressed on, amplifying the sense of surreal dread. Rain cascaded down Michael's face, merging with the perspiration already drenching his uniform. He felt adrift in a waking nightmare, a warped reality where agony reigned supreme. He reached a small, silver hatchback, nearly eclipsed beneath the mass of a delivery truck. The most grievous yet. The roof had collapsed, the glass disintegrated. He saw a form inside, diminutive and inert. He approached cautiously, his hope dwindling. This one looked unsalvageable. He extended a hand into the wreckage, searching for a pulse. Nothing. He double-checked, meticulously, systematically. Still nothing. He stood erect, his expression grim. "Sarah," he called, his voice devoid of inflection. "I need a shroud." Sarah materialized beside him, her countenance etched with concern. She proffered a white sheet, the thin fabric already saturated by the rain. He accepted it silently, and gently draped it over the slight figure within the car, shielding it from the unrelenting onslaught. As he secured the material around the figure's head, he detected it. A faint murmur, scarcely audible above the storm, but undeniably there. He froze, his hand suspended above the sheet. He strained to hear, endeavoring to interpret the sound. Then he registered it again, clearer now. A child's voice, reciting something. He leaned closer, his breath seizing in his lungs. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Psalm 23. He tore back the sheet, his eyes widening in astonishment. The girl inside, no older than 7 or 8, lay amidst the mangled steel and shattered glass, her eyes shut. Her complexion was pallid, almost ethereal, yet her lips moved, whispering the timeless words of solace. "He mocketh me to lie down in green pastures, he leadeth me beside the still waters." Michael gaped at her, his mind reeling. He had declared her deceased. He had concealed her with a shroud, the universal emblem of finality. Yet here she remained, clinging to life, intoning scripture in the storm's heart. He fumbled for his stethoscope, his hands trembling. He pressed it to her chest, listening intently. A faint, fluttering heartbeat. Weak, but indubitably present. He glanced at Sarah, his eyes brimming with a blend of shock and wonder. "She's alive!" he rasped, his voice hoarse with emotion. "She's actually alive!" The rain persisted, but for the first occasion since arriving, Michael ceased to notice. His total concentration was on the small, fragile life before him, a life he had prematurely dismissed, a life currently reciting its way back from oblivion. The psalm persisted, soft yet unwavering amid the pandemonium, a beacon of hope amidst the wreckage. Lifeless in the minivan. The rain persisted, a relentless assault. It drummed against Michael's rain gear as he and Diaz picked through the debris field, a noxious blend of spilled fuel and fractured safety glass reflecting the strobe of emergency lights. They stopped at a minivan, compressed against the barrier like so much crumpled foil. Its front was obliterated, the engine a grotesque tangle of twisted metal and ruined hopes. "This is rough," Diaz murmured, his flashlight beams slicing through the interior. Deployed airbags, like bloated specters, filled the space with a sharp, chemical reek. Circling the vehicle, Michael's boots crunched on the detritus. The sliding door was stuck, buckled inward. He fought with it, the tortured metal shrieking against the storm's roar, until it finally relented. Inside, a child's car seat, violently uprooted, lay askew. Scattered toys, a one-eared rabbit, a fractured xylophone, littered the scene. Then he noticed her. Small and still amidst the chaos, limbs angled wrong. A girl, perhaps 7, dark hair plastered to her pale forehead. Her face was ashen, almost ethereal in the flashlight's glow. No visible trauma, no gushing wounds or protruding bones, yet the devastation spoke volumes. Michael knelt, unmindful of the water soaking his trousers. "Hello? Can you hear me?" His voice, calm and measured, cut through the storm, a stark contrast to the chaos gripping him. Silence. He reached for her wrist, seeking a pulse. The skin was ice-cold, slick with moisture. He held his breath, concentrating, desperately searching for a faint flutter. Nothing. He tried her neck, gently probing for a carotid beat. Still nothing. The absence of sound was complete, save for the incessant rain and the distant siren's song. Diaz squeezed beside him, his face a mask of concern. "Anything, Mike?" Michael shook his head, his gaze locked on the girl's serene face. From his kit, he produced a penlight, flicking it on and directing the beam into her eyes. No reaction. The pupils were wide, unmoving. "Unresponsive," he stated, his voice devoid of inflection, all professional distance. He ran his hand across her chest, seeking any sign of breath. Her small chest remained unnervingly still, no rise, no fall, no subtle hint of life. He checked again, double-checking, his fingers lingering on her frigid flesh. He knew the pronouncement he had to make, felt it like a stone in his gut, but couldn't voice it. Not yet. He yearned to discover something, anything, a flicker of existence within this tragic tableau. But there was only absence. Fixed and dilated. No pulse, no respiration. He finally managed, the words heavy as lead. He met Diaz's gaze, his own reflecting a weariness that transcended the long hours and the ceaseless downpour. "She's gone." Diaz nodded, his expression grave. They both knew the routine. In their profession, death was a constant companion, an unwelcome attendee at every accident. But it never dulled the edge, especially not with a child. Michael reached for the shroud in his kit, the flimsy fabric a jarring contrast to the surrounding wreckage. He unfolded it, the stark white material symbolizing defeat, a surrender to the inevitable. He paused, his hand hovering over her face. He loathed this part. Hated obscuring them, stripping their humanity, reducing them to another mark in the night's bleak inventory. But it was protocol. It was respect. It was the last gesture of care they could offer. He studied her face, committing to memory the delicate features, the gentle curve of her cheek, the subtle smile playing on her lips. He wondered about her identity, her name, the dreams that would now go unfulfilled. He wondered if anyone was waiting, unaware that she lay here, lifeless in the shattered remains of a minivan. He closed his eyes briefly, offering a silent benediction, a plea for solace for those who would mourn her passing. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world, he carefully draped the sheet over her face. A whisper of faith. The white sheet felt thin beneath Michael's calloused fingers. He smoothed it over her small form, the gesture automatic, practiced 100 times, yet each time a fresh pang in his gut. He reached her face, pausing a moment, the image of her peaceful, youthful features burned into his memory. Then, with a sigh that hitched in his chest, he completed the final act. "Rest easy, kiddo," he murmured, his voice rough. A silence descended, broken only by the distant sirens and the crackle of radios. Michael stood, straightening his aching back, preparing to move on to the next casualty. He took one last look at the covered figure, a silent farewell. Then a sound. Faint, almost imperceptible, a mere whisper on the wind. He froze. It couldn't be. The Lord. Michael's blood turned to ice. He swung back, his eyes wide, searching. The air hung thick with the smell of gasoline and burned rubber, but beneath it, he heard it again, clearer this time. "Is my shepherd, I shall not want." It was coming from beneath the sheet. He dropped to his knees, his heart hammering against his ribs. This couldn't be happening. He checked. He checked twice. No pulse. No respiration. Nothing. But there it was, a child's voice, weak and tremulous, reciting scripture. With trembling hands, he pulled back the sheet, his eyes darting over her face, searching for any sign of life. Her eyes were closed, her face pale, but her lips moved, forming the words. "He mocketh me to lie down in green pastures, he leadeth me beside the still waters." Michael reached for her wrist, his fingers fumbling, desperate. He pressed hard, willing himself to feel something, anything. And then, a faint flutter. A ghost of a pulse. "Diaz!" he yelled, his voice cracking with a mixture of disbelief and elation. "Diaz, get over here! Now!" He kept his fingers on her wrist, his eyes glued to her face, as if afraid she would vanish if he looked away. The recitation continued, a fragile thread of faith in the midst of chaos. "He restoreth my soul, he leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake." Diaz arrived, his brow furrowed with concern. "What is it, Michael? What's wrong?" "She's alive, Diaz! She's alive!" Michael exclaimed, his voice hoarse. "I got a pulse." Diaz stared at him, his expression incredulous. "But you said—" "I know what I said," Michael snapped, his voice laced with urgency. "Just help me. Get me the pediatric airway bag. And call it in. We need a chopper stat." Diaz, shaken but professional, immediately snapped into action. He grabbed the airway bag from the kit and began prepping the intubation equipment. Michael gently palpated Lily's chest, feeling for any sign of spontaneous respiration. Shallow, almost undetectable, but there. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." The words, spoken with such conviction despite her near-death state, sent a shiver down Michael's spine. He'd seen a lot of death in his years as a paramedic, but he'd never witnessed anything like this. He looked at Lily, at her peaceful face, illuminated by the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles. He didn't know how she was alive, or why, but he knew one thing: he wasn't going to let her die. Not if he could help it. He carefully inserted an oropharyngeal airway, praying he wasn't doing more harm than good. Diaz was ready with the amber bag, and they began ventilating her, 2 breaths every 10 seconds. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. The recitation was faltering now, the words slurring, her voice fading. Stay with us, kiddo, Michael urged, his voice gentle. Just keep breathing. We're here. We're going to take care of you. He glanced up at Diaz, his eyes pleading. Diaz nodded, his expression grim but determined. They worked in unison, a well-oiled machine, fighting for the life of a little girl who, against all odds, was still clinging to this world. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The last words trailed off into silence. Her chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the amber bag. Michael held his breath, listening for any sound, any sign that she was still with them. The only sound was the hiss of the oxygen and the pounding of his own heart. Then, a faint cough. Michael squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, relief washing over him in a wave. He looked at Diaz, a silent acknowledgement of the miracle they had just witnessed. The sound of the approaching helicopter grew louder, a beacon of hope cutting through the night. Michael knew they still had a long way to go, but for the first time that night, he felt a glimmer of hope. A whisper of faith in the face of despair. Race against time. A tremor, delicate as a butterfly's wing, pulsed beneath his fingertips. Michael leaned in, battling his own surging adrenaline, striving to isolate the faint, erratic pulse fighting against the encroaching stillness. There. Again. A gossamer thread tethering her to this world, so fragile it could sever with a careless breath. Diaz! He snapped, his voice ragged. Pulse. Weak, irregular, but present. Prep the monitor. Move. Diaz, already cataloging the meager possessions of the deceased, spun around, disbelief twisting his features. Mike, you sure? Protocol demanded. Damn the protocol, Diaz. The monitor, now. Michael roared, his focus absolute. Hesitation was a luxury they couldn't afford. The screen flickered to life, a spiky, uneven waveform etching itself across the green. 60 BPM. Critically low. He secured a nasal cannula, the hiss of oxygen a fragile counterpoint to the blare of the scene. We're rolling. Immediate transport required. Trauma 1. PEDS team on standby. This girl's slipping away. He snatched the radio, his voice tight with urgency. Dispatch, Medic 1. Pediatric trauma, approximately 8 years old, ejected from vehicle. Initial assessment negative for life signs, however, we've established a tenuous pulse. GCS of 3. Suspect severe head trauma, possible internal injuries. Request immediate air evac to County General. Correction, ground transport. Aviation's grounded due to weather. En route, code 3. Clear. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he barked at Diaz to ready the gurney. Time bled away with each passing heartbeat. He lifted Lily, her slight body cradled in his arms. She weighed next to nothing, as insubstantial as thistledown. It felt sacrilegious carrying her like this, as if she were a discarded plaything. But necessity demanded it. The ambulance doors slammed, the siren's cry tearing through the night as Diaz slammed the accelerator. Michael knelt beside the gurney, his gaze riveted to the monitor. The oscillating line faltered, plunging alarmingly, then spiking briefly before resuming its erratic dance. A cruel ballet of hope and despair. BP's tanking! Diaz shouted over the din, his voice tight with concern. We're losing her, Mike! He cursed under his breath, his fingers clumsy as he located the foreport and threaded the needle into her tiny arm. Saline flowed, a desperate attempt to replenish her plummeting reserves. Lily's eyelids fluttered. Her eyes, distant and clouded with agony, held a flicker of something. Recognition? She uttered a faint sound, the words lost in the chaos. Lily, can you hear me? Michael spoke close to her ear, his tone both gentle and commanding. Squeeze my hand if you understand. A faint tremor, a barely perceptible clench. But it was there. That's it, Lily. Hold on. We're almost there. He spared a glance at the monitor. The heart rate was inching upward, a tentative climb. A fragile ray of hope in the gathering darkness. The ambulance lurched around a bend, tires screaming in anguish. Inside, the world dissolved into a vortex of fractured light and blurry shapes. Michael tightened his grip on Lily's hand, urging her to fight. He recalled his own daughter's small hand nestled in his, the implicit trust reflected in her eyes. He couldn't let this girl succumb. Not now. Not after this. Psalm. Lily whispered, her voice a breathy exhalation. Michael strained to decipher her words. What was that, Lily? What are you saying? Psalm 20. Her voice trailed off, her eyes drifting shut once more. Diaz eta? Michael demanded, his voice taut with anxiety. 5 minutes tops. Traffic's a cluster. 5 minutes. An eternity in the balance. Michael watched the monitor, his own heart hammering in counterpoint to the siren's relentless shriek. The erratic waveform continued its macabre performance, a constant reminder of the precariousness of her existence. He wiped perspiration from his forehead, his hands exhibiting a slight tremor. He had witnessed too much death, too much devastation. Exhaustion clung to him like a shroud. But surrender was not an option. Not for her. He leaned closer, his voice a mere whisper in the frantic symphony of the ambulance. Hold on, Lily. Just a little longer. We're almost there. You're going to be all right. He wasn't sure she registered his words, but he needed to believe it. He needed to believe that somehow, against all odds, she would endure. He needed a miracle. Because that was all that remained. Waiting and praying. The rhythmic hiss of the ventilator was Lily's only companion now. Gone was the jarring symphony of sirens, the frantic shouts of paramedics, the metallic screech of twisted metal. Here, in the sterile white expanse of the emergency room, a different kind of battle raged. Doctors, their faces etched with grim determination, moved with practiced precision. Wires snaked from Lily's small body, feeding vital information to the monitors that beeped and flashed in a relentless, unwavering chorus. Michael stood just outside, separated from the controlled chaos by a thick pane of glass. He watched, helpless, as they fought for the girl he'd pulled from the wreckage. His own clothes, still bearing the grim testament of the scene, felt alien against his skin. He scrubbed a hand over his face, the gritty residue of the accident clinging stubbornly to his skin. He couldn't shake the image of her pale face, her whispered words echoing in his mind. The Lord is my shepherd. Across the hall, in a small, sterile waiting room, Lily's parents, David and Sarah Thompson, sat huddled together. David's arm was in a sling, and Sarah had a bandage wrapped around her head. Their eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, were fixed on the closed door leading to the surgical wing. They hadn't spoken in what felt like an eternity, the silence punctuated only by Sarah's occasional, muffled sob. Each jump of the heart monitor on the wall outside was a hammer blow of anxiety. David squeezed Sarah's hand, his knuckles white. She's strong, Sarah, he said, his voice hoarse. Remember how she was with the school play? Even when she forgot her lines, she just kept going. She's a fighter. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. She gets that from you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Remember that camping trip when we got lost? You kept us all calm, even when I thought we were goners. They clung to those memories, fragments of a life that now felt impossibly distant, a fragile shield against the crushing weight of the unknown. Lily, meanwhile, was far away from the cold reality of the operating room. She was in her grandmother's sunny kitchen, the air thick with the sweet scent of baking bread. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Her grandmother, Nana Rose, a woman whose face was a road map of wrinkles etched by laughter and love, sat beside her, a worn Bible open on the table. "Okay, Lilybug," Nana Rose said, her voice raspy but warm. "Let's try it again. Psalm 23. Can you say it with me?" Lily, then just 6 years old, furrowed her brow in concentration. "The Lord is my shepherd," she began tentatively. I shall not want." "Good, good," Nana Rose encouraged, her eyes twinkling. "He maketh me to lie down in green pastures." Lily stumbled over the words, giggling as Nana Rose gently corrected her pronunciation. It wasn't just memorization, Nana Rose made the words come alive. She explained how the shepherd cared for his sheep, how he protected them from harm, how he led them to safety. She told Lily that the Lord was like that shepherd, always watching over her, always there to guide her. "Even when things get scary, Lilybug," Nana Rose had said, her voice softening, "remember these words. They'll keep you safe." Back in the present, in the sterile confines of the hospital, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that he should be doing more. He paced the hallway, his boots echoing on the linoleum floor. He knew, rationally, that he had done everything he could. He had gotten her here, alive. But the image of his own daughter's face kept flashing in his mind, a constant reminder of the fragility of life, of the devastating consequences of fate. He found himself whispering a prayer he hadn't uttered in years, a plea to a God he wasn't even sure he believed in anymore. Inside the waiting room, David and Sarah bowed their heads, clutching each other's hands. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. They were caught in a limbo of fear and hope, waiting for a sign, a word, anything to break the agonizing suspense. They closed their eyes, each silently praying for a miracle, for their little girl to pull through, for a second chance at a life that had been so brutally interrupted. Days of uncertainty. The heart monitor's blip was Lily's only utterance, a stark, unyielding rhythm against the silent entreaties swirling in Michael's mind. Days dissolved into weeks, an indistinct haze. Lily remained isolated, a solitary spar on an endless, unfathomable ocean. Her frail form, usually a wellspring of vitality, was unnervingly still under the stark hospital linens, tethered to a network of tubes and wires promising life, a promise cruelly deferred. Each dawn, even before his shift, Michael was pulled back to her side. He'd forsake the hospital corridor's frigid sterility for the room's slightly warmer, vaguely antiseptic atmosphere. He'd settle into the rigid plastic chair, the quiet punctured only by the ventilator's steady sigh and the monitor's insistent blip. He brought his grandmother's well-worn Bible, untouched for years. Its leaves, brittle and inscribed with her looping script, held memories of her voice, a soothing balm against childhood's hurts. He now wished it could be a similar salve for Lily, a lifeline thrown into her quiet abyss. He began with Psalm 23, the verses both familiar and alien on his tongue. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." The words felt empty, almost derisive, as he gazed at Lily, her face ashen and immobile. What lack did she? She longed to live. To breathe without mechanical assistance. To run, to laugh, to feel the sun's warmth. He continued, his voice a mere breath, the phrases catching in his throat. Another hospital room intruded, another life teetering. Sarah, his wife. A drunk driver, an unguarded intersection, a life stolen. Faith had shattered then, splintering beyond repair. He regarded Lily's small hand, resting inertly on the blanket. He reached, paused, and gently enclosed it. Her skin was cool, papery. He closed his eyes, the psalm a meaningless drone. He was a charlatan, reciting words devoid of meaning. He whiled away hours by her bed, reading, talking, often just rambling. He recounted the city, the dawn light on the river, the crusty regular at the diner near the station, the one who only drank black coffee. He spoke of the call that irrevocably altered his life, the one where he heard her voice. He revealed how near he came to missing it, how close she came to being just another statistic. He spoke of guilt, a burdensome mantle worn for too long. Guilt for failing Sarah, guilt for the lives he couldn't rescue, guilt for the cynicism that had become his armor. One afternoon, David and Sarah Thompson were there upon his arrival. David, arm braced in a sling, slumped in a chair, his face lined with anxiety. Sarah, her leg encased in a cast, stood by the window, her gaze locked on the distant cityscape. The room was thick with unspoken dread, a silent vigil held by three fractured souls. "She squeezed my hand," Sarah murmured, barely audible. Michael looked up, a flicker of hope igniting within him. "Just for a moment. I think she recognizes us." Michael settled down, his gaze riveted to Lily's face. He perceived no change, no indication of awareness. But Sarah's words, fragile as they were, offered a glimmer of light in the prevailing darkness. He opened the Bible, his fingers running along the worn edges of the pages. He commenced reading, his voice stronger now, imbued with renewed resolve. He couldn't know if Lily could hear him, if the language held any significance. But he knew he had to continue. He had to persevere. For Lily, for Sarah, for David, and perhaps, finally, for himself. He recited the psalm repeatedly, until the words transformed into a prayer, a plea, a desperate hope whispered into the hush. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff they comfort me." He implored for solace, for restoration, for a miracle. He prayed for Lily to awaken. A glimmer of hope. The sterile chill of the ICU felt muted today, almost bearable. Michael sat vigil, the aged leather of his grandmother's Bible a familiar comfort against his skin. Psalm 23. He'd been revisiting it daily, praying its cadence would pierce the chemical fog shrouding Lily. He began, his voice a soft murmur against the backdrop of whirring ventilators and rhythmic beeps. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in verdant pastures, He leads me beside quiet waters." The words caught in his throat, a lump forming there. He'd always drawn solace from this psalm, a tranquility absent in recent years. He continued, "He restores my soul, He guides me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake." As the fourth verse spilled from his lips, a subtle shift tugged at his awareness. He faltered, his pulse quickening. Imagination? He scrutinized Lily's hand, pale against the starched white linen. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." There. Again. A barely perceptible tremor. Her fingers, loosely curled, seemed to dance, seeking something intangible. Michael stilled, riveted. He finished the verse, his voice hushed. "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows." A more pronounced twitch this time. He reached for her, his own hand unsteady, and gently enfolded hers. Her skin felt cool, almost ethereal. A silent entreaty in his touch. He started the fifth verse anew. As he spoke the words, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." Her fingers responded, contracting faintly around his. Michael's breath caught in his chest. He answered the pressure, adrenaline surging through him, banishing the ever-present weariness. He leaned in, studying her face intently. Her eyelids, usually immobile, fluttered like trapped moths. He paused, unwilling to shatter the nascent connection. He whispered her name, raw emotion lacing his tone. "Lily? Lily, can you hear me?" Her breathing remained shallow, but the quivering intensified. Then, with agonizing slowness, her eyelids peeled back. He waited, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The harsh light sparked in her tear-filmed eyes as they struggled to focus. At first they drifted, taking in the blaring monitors, the snaking tubes, the clinical starkness. Then, gradually, they locked onto him. He detected a glimmer of recognition, a spark of consciousness stirring within their depths. The same vivid azure he remembered from that awful day, dulled now, veiled by pain and confusion. He leaned closer, his voice soft, reassuring. "Lily, it's Michael. You're safe. You're in the hospital." She blinked, her focus unwavering. He saw the tremendous effort it took to concentrate, to comprehend. A moment stretched into an eternity. He held his breath, tempering his hope, bracing himself against the crushing disappointment that had become his unwelcome companion. Then, a subtle, almost invisible shift. The corner of her mouth quirked, a fleeting ghost of a smile. Her lips moved almost imperceptibly, and she whispered a single word, barely audible. Psalm. A wave of emotion washed over Michael, so potent it threatened to drown him. Relief, gratitude, disbelief, and something more profound, something long dormant, incandescent hope. He squeezed her hand again, tears blurring his vision. He couldn't speak, his voice locked tight in his throat. Lily's eyes drifted shut once more, exhaustion dragging her back into the abyss. But this time felt different. This time, she wasn't merely succumbing. This time, she was battling. He knew it. He felt it in the slight pressure of her fingers, in the frail echo of her voice. He remained steadfast, holding her hand, the Bible splayed open on his lap. The machine's drone no longer assaulted his ears. Instead, it thrummed like a lifeline, a steady beat connecting him to the miracle unfolding before him. A miracle he refused to relinquish. Waking up. The world coalesced, a hazy wash of ivory and verdant hues. A persistent throb resonated behind Lily's eyes, a steady pulse competing with the room's rhythmic beeping. Her parched throat felt constricted, her chest burdened by an odd pressure. She willed her limbs to move, but they remained stubbornly inert. Panic pricked at the edges of her awareness. Where was she? What had befallen her? Then, a familiar cadence, a soothing lilt, reverberated in the silence of her mind. Yea, though I traverse the valley of shadow, I shall fear no harm, for you are with me, your rod and staff, they give me courage. Fragments of a memory, these words anchored her in the swirling haze of her consciousness. Psalm 23. She recalled a voice, both strong and tender, reciting the verse. A weary yet kind face. Blinking, she focused on the indistinct figure hovering near her bedside. It was the man from her fading recollections. His eyes, though fatigued, radiated a recognizable warmth. Psalm, she croaked, the word catching in her raw throat. His head shot up, weary concern replaced by stunned disbelief. He edged closer, his hand hesitating above hers. Lily? Is that really you? She managed a feeble nod, the effort triggering a spike of pain in her head. The machines around her seemed to intensify their chorus, a frantic orchestra accompanying her return. She's waking up! Dr. Evans, she's regaining consciousness! The man's voice, now buoyant with elation, sliced through the sterile hum of the ICU. A surge of activity erupted. Intense lights assaulted her vision, and a multitude of voices, hushed and urgent, filled the air. A woman in a white coat examined her pupils with a penlight, muttering about reflexes and responses. Another nurse palpated her wrist, brow furrowed in concentration as she took her pulse. Lily struggled to decipher the pandemonium, the sudden flood of sensory input overwhelming her fragile hold. She squeezed her eyes shut, clinging to the echo of the psalm, the only constant in this disorienting reality. Lily, can you hear me? The woman in the white coat inquired, her tone calm and reassuring. Can you squeeze my hand? Summoning all her resolve, she focused on the woman's hand resting on hers. Slowly, tentatively, she squeezed. A collective intake of breaths swept through the room. The doctor exchanged a look of profound astonishment with the nurses. Extraordinary, she breathed, shaking her head slightly. Truly extraordinary. Michael watched, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs, as Lily endured a flurry of examinations. A wave of profound relief washed over him, so intense, he nearly buckled. He had witnessed so much loss, so much anguish, he had almost forgotten the sensation of hope. Yet here, in this antiseptic room, hope was a tangible presence, alive and breathing. Later, as Lily slipped back into a fitful slumber, exhausted but stable, Dr. Evans drew Michael aside. Mr. Riley, she began, her voice tinged with wonder. What you've witnessed, what we're all witnessing, borders on the miraculous. We had prepared her parents for the gravest outcome. The damage was extensive. We truly didn't expect her to survive the night. I simply read to her," Michael stammered, feeling oddly exposed. "I read her Psalm 23. Dr. Evans offered a genuine smile, a heartfelt expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "Sometimes, Mr. Riley, the simplest acts possess the greatest power. Her journey is just beginning, but the fact that she recognized you, that she responded, it's remarkable. We'll continue to monitor her meticulously. Further tests are required to assess the extent of any potential cognitive impairment. But for now, we have reason for optimism." Word of Lily's improbable recovery spread through the hospital like wildfire. Murmurs of "the Lazarus case" reverberated among the staff, a mixture of incredulity and reverence. Nurses, calloused by years of bearing witness to despair, found themselves shedding tears. Physicians, trained to prioritize empirical evidence, struggled to reconcile the inexplicable. The story even garnered local news coverage, a brief, understated piece about a young girl who had defied all expectations. But the seed had been sown. The story of Lily Thompson, the girl who had whispered Psalm from the precipice of oblivion, was poised to burgeon into something far grander. A bond forged in faith. The sterile scent of the ICU was a stark contrast to the blossoming garden Michael felt blooming in his chest. Lily, propped up slightly in bed, her eyes bright and inquisitive, was a miracle in every sense of the word. "Mr. Riley," she said, her voice a soft whisper, "do you think angels sing?" Michael chuckled, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "I don't know, Lily. But if they do, I'd bet they sound a lot like you." She giggled, a delicate sound that sent a wave of relief through him. "Mama used to say my singing could charm the birds right out of the trees." They spent the afternoon talking. Lily asked about his family, his work, his favorite color blue, like the sky before a storm, he told her. He told her about his days as a boy, fishing with his grandfather, the smell of pine needles in the summer air, the comforting weight of a worn baseball glove. With each shared memory, a deeper connection formed, a bond forged not just in faith, but in the simple act of being present, of truly seeing each other. Outside the small bubble of their conversation, the world was taking notice. News reports flashed across television screens. "Miracle child recovers after highway tragedy, Psalm 23 and a prayer. The story that's gripping the nation, is this a medical miracle?" Skepticism mingled with awe. Doctors offered cautious explanations, citing the resilience of youth, the mysteries of the human brain. Others whispered about divine intervention, the power of prayer, the inexplicable ways of God. The hospital became a media circus, a constant hum of cameras and microphones, all vying for a glimpse of the girl who had defied death. Dr. Evans, usually so calm and collected, looked harried. "Michael," he said, catching him in the hallway. "The media, they're relentless. We're getting calls from all over the world. People want to understand what happened, how she recovered so quickly." He paused, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Frankly, so do I." Michael understood the doctor's bewilderment, the scientific mind struggling to reconcile the tangible with the seemingly impossible. But he also knew, deep down, that some things transcended explanation, that some mysteries were best left unraveled. Lily, surprisingly unfazed by the attention, took it all in with a quiet curiosity. She watched the news reports with a thoughtful expression, her small brow furrowed. "Why are they so surprised, Mr. Riley?" she asked him one evening. "Doesn't everyone know God is good?" Her unwavering faith was a balm to his weary soul. He found himself drawn to her unwavering optimism, her ability to find light in the darkest of places. He realized that she wasn't just healing, she was healing him too, chipping away at the hardened shell he had built around his heart. Then came the offer from a national news program. An interview, live, with Lily and Michael. The hospital administration, after much deliberation, agreed. It was an opportunity to share Lily's story of hope with the world, to offer a beacon of light in a time of darkness. The day of the interview dawned bright and clear. Lily, dressed in a simple blue dress, sat calmly on the stage, a small microphone clipped to her collar. Michael sat beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back, a silent reassurance. The interviewer, a seasoned journalist with a reputation for tough questions, began cautiously. Lily, thank you for being here. Your story has touched so many people. Can you tell us what you remember from the accident? Lily took a deep breath, her eyes sparkling. I remember pain and darkness. But then I heard Mr. Riley reading. And it was like a warm blanket wrapping around me. I wasn't so scared anymore. Mr. Riley? The interviewer turned to him. You were the paramedic on the scene. What made you decide to read to her? Michael hesitated, searching for the right words. I don't know. It just felt like the right thing to do. Like she needed it. And maybe, he added, his voice barely a whisper, maybe I needed it too. The interview continued, the interviewer probing, questioning, searching for answers. But Lily remained steadfast, her faith unwavering, her spirit shining. And then, the interviewer asked the question that everyone had been waiting for. Lily, some people are calling your recovery a miracle. Do you believe it's a miracle? Lily looked directly into the camera, her eyes filled with an unwavering conviction. Of course it's a miracle, she said, her voice clear and strong. God saved me. And He has a plan for me. I don't know what it is yet, but I trust Him. She paused, then added, and maybe my miracle is to help other people find their own. A hush fell over the studio. In that moment, Lily wasn't just a survivor, she was a messenger, a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of faith. And Michael, sitting beside her, felt a surge of renewed purpose, a sense of belonging he hadn't felt in years. Their bond, forged in faith, was now a light shining for the world to see. The miracle on Highway 17. Years drifted by, leaving faint tracks of experience near Michael's eyes, tempering the sharp edges grief had hammered into him. The weight he carried, once a suffocating cloak of guilt, had eased, becoming a gentler burden, a poignant reminder of life's fragility and a reason to persevere. His work as a paramedic took on a new dimension. He wasn't just administering aid and fighting against the clock, he connected with individuals, listened to their narratives, offering a steadying hand. He found himself murmuring verses from Psalm 23 to the frightened and injured, not as a memorized echo, but as a genuine offering of solace. The words, once a stark reminder of near loss, now flowed effortlessly, a salve for his spirit, and he hoped for theirs. Visits to Lily were frequent. The girl, now a vibrant young woman, possessed an inner radiance that seemed to brighten every room she graced. She was a luminous presence, a testament to the strength of spirit and enduring faith. Lily volunteered at the same hospital where she had once been a patient, her smile a potent remedy, her presence a quiet reassurance as she walked the corridors. She'd offer a comforting touch to the afflicted, lend an ear to their anxieties, and offer words of encouragement in a voice that, despite its gentle quality, resonated with surprising strength. One afternoon, Michael observed her sitting with an elderly woman in the oncology ward. The woman's face was drawn, her eyes reflecting the weariness of battles fought. Lily clasped her hand, her fingers interlaced with the woman's, her head bowed in silent supplication. He lingered in the background, a knot forming in his throat. He watched the woman's shoulders relax, her breathing grow less labored. Lily concluded her prayer, met the woman's gaze, and offered a reassuring smile. Everything will be all right, she murmured. You're stronger than you realize. The woman managed a faint smile. Thank you, dear, she rasped. You're a true angel. Lily blushed, gently squeezing the woman's hand. Just doing what I can, she replied modestly. Michael waited until Lily's visit concluded before approaching. You have a remarkable gift, Lily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You bring solace and hope to others. Lily shrugged, her cheeks coloring slightly. I'm simply trying to share the grace I've been given, she said. Besides, it all began with you, Michael. You offered me hope when I was at my lowest. He shook his head, his gaze meeting hers. "No, Lily," he countered. "You gave it to me. You demonstrated that even in the deepest darkness, light persists." They strolled together through the hospital's hushed hallways, their footsteps echoing softly. He couldn't help but notice how people turned toward Lily, their faces softening with recognition and warmth. She was a beacon, a tangible reminder that miracles could occur. "Do you ever reflect on that day, on Highway 17? She inquired, breaking the quiet. He nodded. "Every single day," he admitted. "It redefined everything." "Me too," she responded. "My memories are fragmented, but I remember you. I recall your voice reading to me. It was like a lifeline thrown to me. I was simply fulfilling my duty." He demurred, knowing it was far more profound than that. He had been lost, drowning in a sea of despair, and Lily had been his anchor. "You did so much more," she insisted. "You showed me that someone cared. That I wasn't alone in my struggle." They paused near the hospital entrance, the automatic doors gliding open to reveal the vibrant city beyond. The setting sun painted long shadows across the sidewalk. "Where to now?" he asked. Lily smiled. "Keep going," she replied. "Keep assisting others. Keep spreading hope's message." And that's precisely what transpired. They visited schools, churches, community centers, sharing their narrative, a chronicle of tribulation and triumph, of bleakness and hope, a miracle birthed on Highway 17. They spoke of faith, of tenacity, of the human heart's capacity to transcend even the most insurmountable challenges. Michael found himself more openly discussing his personal battles, the shadows he had navigated, and the illumination Lily had reignited in his world. He rediscovered his own faith, not as a rote adherence to doctrine, but as a profound and unwavering trust in the inherent goodness of humanity, the transformative power of love, and the promise of a radiant tomorrow. Together, they became a symbol of hope renewed, a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. They were a living reminder that even amidst tragedy, miracles could blossom, and the smallest act of compassion could ripple outwards, changing the world. They were, in their own unique way, a living embodiment of the words of Psalm 23. "Surely goodness and mercy shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever."